This old guy DIY video has to do with replacing the front hub assembly on a 2003 Chevy Tahoe. I'm just going to hit the highlights. There are lots of videos on these things out there already. But when I go to do this job, first I pull off the little cover that covers the lugs, and then I loosen that center nut. It's a lot easier to do it with the tire on the ground. So either use an impact wrench or a big breaker bar. But anyway, I got the thing loose, and then I put the nut back on and just take a big hammer and tap the thing loose so I know when it goes to remove the hub that the shaft will not be hung up in it. And now I'm ready to take the lugs and the wheel off. So when I get to this point, I take the BFH, that would be the big friendly hammer, and I go ahead and whack the end of these lugs. So number one, when I take the thing apart, I'll have replacement lugs that I can throw in the toolbox. And secondly, it provides me an access hole when I go to press the hub off in a few minutes. Now it's just time to remove the caliper. And my technique for getting the 3 bolts off, sorry you can't see it in there. Anyway, there are 3 bolts that hold the back of the hub, and there are 15mm heads on them. So my technique is to use an 18-inch breaker bar with a 3-foot piece of pipe. So I break them loose with that, and then I go in with the impact wrench and back them out the rest of the way. And the top one of these 3 bolts is in a crappy position where you can't get a socket to it. So I just put a 15mm open end wrench on that one and take a little time and get it out of there. So this may be the most valuable part of this video. What I have here is a Harbor Freight gear puller. And I just took the shaft out of the middle. I had to take the tip off the end. I'm going to disassemble it because I only want to use this center piece. And then what I do is come over here where I've knocked the lugs out. I'm going to stick the shaft of the gear puller through and just put it against that piece of steel back there. And then when I crank on it, I should be able to force the hub off. So we'll see how this great plan works out. So I have the gear puller in position. You can see the part that had the jaws is right here behind the hub. And I just picked a piece of steel to dig it into. Now I'm just going to grab this end with the impactor and see if it separates. It's grunting a little bit, but you can see that the hub separated, so now I'll go down to about the 7 o'clock position and hit it once there, and I should be able to wiggle it free. So in the past I've been pounding for an hour with that big friendly hammer and chisels and just getting irritated. I decided I'd try to use leverage this time, and it looks like it's going to work. So with the gear puller now down in the 7 o'clock position, I take that BFH, the big friendly hammer, it's pretty close. There we go. Technology is our friend. And there we have it, a nice rusty 16-year-old hub popped out in about 16 minutes with a gear puller from Harbor Freight as opposed to beating it with assorted big friendly tools. And this one may win the award for the rustiest shaft and hub in West Michigan in 2019. Now, as I'm putting this thing back together, I forgot to show you that I put a lot of this silicone paste on the shaft itself where the splines come in, and I cleaned up the edge of the casting where the hub goes into. I hit it with a wire brush and then a rag, and then I lubed it up with the silicone anti-seize stuff. So we should be good to go here shortly. Well, the job is done, and the car sounds great, feels great, runs great. Thought I'd show you a picture of the equipment I used on this job. So we started out with this Harbor Freight $8 bearing puller that I just took the claws off of. I showed you how to use that in the video. If you don't have a bearing puller and you do have a piece of threaded 1/2-inch rod, you can see the 1/2 inch goes through the lug hole. Obviously this one wouldn't work because it's just threaded on the end. I wanted to show you the 1/2 inch just for size, but a 1/2 inch, probably 4-inch threaded bolt will make it happen. So you need a bolt, a washer, and a nut, and then just hold the nut on the back with an open end wrench or a crescent wrench. Then when I put it back together, I use that Mission silicone paste for taking the thing off. I used a 36 millimeter socket on the Milwaukee impact gun, and then it was 22 millimeters to get the lugs off, 18 millimeters to get the caliper bolts off, 15 millimeter for the 3 bolts on the back of the hub. I used the screwdriver, just a regular slotted screwdriver, to pull the clips for the ABS wire. And then we have a 15 millimeter 3/8 inch drive, and the key here is use a 6-point socket. Don't use a 12 if at all possible. On those rusty things, a 12 tends to round them off. Then I used a 15 millimeter box end wrench for that top hub bolt that you can't get to with the socket. And then I just used this big 18 millimeter as leverage. Lock the 2 box end wrenches together. So basically I had 20 inches of leverage, and I was able to break it loose and also tighten it up. So including time to film, it took me about 2 hours today. I didn't break any knuckles. Oh yeah, I forgot my BFH. There's the big friendly hammer. That's a very valuable tool. So the keys to this thing are the big friendly hammer and the bearing puller from Harbor Freight. And particularly when it comes to taking the axle nut off, if you have an impact gun, it makes it a heck of a lot easier than using a breaker bar with a 6-foot piece of pipe on it. So I hope this thing helped you out, and have a nice day.